Hello and welcome to a episode of We're Not Wizards. It is 2018. How about that? 2018 is like the difference between me kind of 18 years ago and me now, because the number 1 is what I look like 18 years ago and the number 8 is what I look like now. So that's how it is. So thank you for joining us. The tonight is, or today, or this morning, or depending on whenever you're listening, we're going to be talking to Brandon Rowlands from Pangea Games, but he's also known as Brandon the Game Dev. And Brandon is here to talk a little bit about himself. He's here to talk a little bit about his up-and-coming Kickstarter project, and he's also here to talk about the blog. We're just going to do kind of like a bit of a work in progress, kind of getting to know you type of episode. Because, as we all know, I'm a very nosy person. I like to get people on to find out a little bit more about them and sometimes pick the tiny corners of their mind. So, hello, Brandon.
Oh, hello. Thank you for having me on. This is exciting.
No, thank you for coming on. We've been talking back and forward. I get your blog on a regular basis, which is a good read, and we kind of, I think it was at the very, very end of last year, we went, oh, shall we get together and have a chat? So I think that's kind of how everything kind of worked out and came together. So thank you, as I say, thanks very, very much for coming on. Mm-hmm. The reason that we do this, for anybody that hasn't listened to the show before, is because we still wholeheartedly believe that there are quite simply not enough podcasts out there about board games. And the second reason that we're doing this is because we are starting off the new year with a bang, and we've got a lot of people to talk to this month, so we're getting them in thick and we're getting them in fast. So that's why we have Brandon on the show, because, as I say, we'd like to know a little bit more about him. Now, what we normally do is we like to find out a little bit about your history. So we want to find out a little bit about, well, we'll have a little stare back at the past. We'll have a little kind of, I guess, a focus on the present before we kind of dash off down the highway of the future. So do you want to start off maybe by telling us a little bit about how you kind of got into the hobby in general?
In the most backwards way that you can imagine. I started making my own game in like April of 2015, and I didn't have a whole lot of background in modern board games.
Yeah.
Wasn't really familiar with, well, the fact that there's just so many incredible things out there. I just started working on a game called Warco, which is now published. It was kickstarted in, well, not last year, because last year is now 2017,
yep,
but 2016.
Okay.
I chased that for a while, and after a few months of just being online and talking to a lot of people, I realized that there were tons and tons and tons of board games out there, and I didn't even know this was a thing. I got into hobby board gaming by being a designer first and then finding out other games. I started playing everything I could get my hands on after that.
That is an incredibly backwards way to do things. You're completely correct.
Yeah, pretty much.
Did you sit there and you go, I know, I've got an idea. I know there's games like Monopoly and Risk and stuff like that. I'm going to take this genre and I'm going to bring it kicking and screaming into the new decade, and I'm going to invent.
Pretty much, it was pretty much like that. I thought of it like, well, I'll just make a simpler version of Magic. Like, that's what I told myself. That's where my mindset was for a little while in 2015.
So, what was the dawning moment that you realised that actually, there was like a rabbit hole that led you into a whole new world? I mean, was there a particular moment when somebody said, "Oh, have you played Carcassonne? Have you played all these other games?"
That was really early on in 2016, or maybe even a little bit before then. I would say somebody just started asking me like, oh, do you know of all these games? Do you know of Carcassonne and Pandemic? And you know, all these really big names, Ticket to Ride, stuff like that. And I'm just like, no, I'll check them out.
Did you
start grabbing stuff at thrift shops and playing them like that?
You have like the 100-mile stare. You were just like looking off into the distance and you're like, no.
Like, oh my god, this is a thing. This is a thing.
This is a real industry with hundreds of millions of dollars going through it already.
Yeah, it was a pretty sudden epiphany, believe it or not. I feel like people take it for granted that like board games are a huge thing.
No.
And to everybody who doesn't know that, they find out they walk into a comic shop and they see 100 board games and they're just like, I didn't know that was a thing.
I think it happens more often than not. I think we've said on multiple occasions that the board game industry still manages to. Well, okay, you can walk into a Walmart and you can pick up like a video game. Yeah, they have shelving for that. You can't really kind of walk into a lot of the major retailers and find like shelves and shelves and shelves of board games. You still got to find kind of like specialist shops, and it's only now that you're starting to see kind of, it's only been recently that I'm starting to see Sheriff of Nottingham kind of stick up on kind of like board game and kind of like local bookstores or the like. So no, I mean it's no, I mean you still ask people what's board games about, and they'll still tell, well, maybe Carcassonne. People maybe talk about Catan. They'll talk about Monopoly Gamer and stuff like that because the Monopoly brand seems to have tried to rebrand itself or change what it's doing and introduce different mechanics. So that's a kind of a different waste. But
I would be really interested to see how they manage to do that if they choose to do that. Everybody gives Monopoly a lot of grief, and they should. There's a lot of bad mechanics in there, but I would really like to see either a fan edit or like an official one where they fix a lot of like the runaway leader problems, stuff like that.
I think there's always I don't know. I mean, I've seen. Have you actually tried Monopoly Gamer? It's got like they've taken actually the Mario characters. So you've got Mario, you've got Donkey Kong, you've got Toad, you've got a couple. They've got a cast of characters, and what they've done is they've turned it almost into like a miniature kind of like Mario game where you're kind of battling each other to kind of get around the board and then have like a boss battle. So they've completely changed it. They've made it slightly more cooperative, but it's an awful lot of fun, and I think it's the most fun I've had with Monopoly in a long, long time.
Low bar, but that's still a mind-blowing thing that they're actually trying to change up their style. Like that's a really good move, I think.
Yeah, well, they've done the thing where they've made because they've got the Mario IP. They've now got, you can get the collector's edition, which has extra characters, but they've also got booster packs. So you can actually open them up and you get other characters from the Mario universe to play on your Monopoly game or board game. It's
It's like Monopoly the Gathering.
Oh, let's not go there. No, I promised. I mean, New Year resolution to talk about magic is as least as possible, and we've already got off to a bad start.
Well, why would we talk about magic? We're not wizards.
That's pretty much right.
So I have an analogy. I have an analogy for like what I see happening in board games as far as how they relate to like a pop cultural kind of mainstream.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe I'll be right, and maybe I'll be wrong. Who knows? Revisit this in 5 years. Around like 2008 when superhero movies like by Marvel were just starting to become a lot more of a thing. Like I'm talking between the first Iron Man and Avengers.
Yeah.
That period where it was really starting to build steam.
Yeah.
I gotta wonder if we're not in something like that for hobby board games, where it's just starting to get into Target, where it's just starting to get into Barnes & Noble. It's been a thing for a long time. A lot of people have loved board games for a long time, but it might just be breaking into the mainstream beyond a handful of anomalies.
I think because there's money in it. I think the Kickstarter revolution has really helped it, because they're now saying that board game Kickstarters now make more money than video game Kickstarters, which is
crazy.
Probably, well, it's probably not a. I can see it. It's not a staggering fact to me, considering that pretty much the route to getting into having a board game Kickstarter is probably a little bit easier than maybe getting a video game starter kind of up, depending on obviously the amount of cash that you have.
Right.
But I see the analogy, yeah, totally. I think there's columns in newspapers, and we're not just getting here's the top 10 board games that you should be playing with your family for Christmas, and you can see games like King Domino kind of sneaking in, and not every article about playing kind of games with your friends has a kind of a headline talking about Cards Against Humanity, which seemed to be kind of like the buzzword amongst the press that didn't know that other kind of games kind of existed. So
I've still got a handful of friends in college who are starting to pick up, hobby board games like off of Kickstarter, or that was started on Kickstarter. I'm getting almost slightly out of that age range where I still know people in college, but like those who I still know are starting to pick up board games like that.
Yeah, I know people going to college. They're almost... It's like people go to college is like my daughter and son in about 7 years' time now, so that's where I am with that. I'll be dropping them off to and coming and getting them from college. I can't say I can't if I hang around with college, I'm going to get kind of arrested pretty much.
They'll show they'll just come back from college to raid your fridge and fall asleep.
Yeah, pretty much that's how it's going to be. So in the couple of years that you've gone from designing games to discovering games, which is amazing, what kind of, have you amassed quite a reasonable collection kind of since then? Do you have a proud wall of cardboard behind you just now?
I'm a bit of a minimalist when it comes to actual possessions. I've got board game possessions. I've got maybe my closet's halfway cracked and this headset's on a wire, so I'm trying to estimate it. 15 or 20 up there. Some of them are prototypes that people have sent to me too, which I've had a lot of fun with. I play most of them either in meetup groups or sometimes people have board game nights at their home, so I'll play that there. Tabletop sim. That's becoming more of a thing when I'm doing testing online.
Yeah. Is that just so that you don't have to end up with as you said, a closet full of games? Because 15 to 20 games, you're falling into the snobs amongst the crowd. We go, he's a bit of a casual gamer, that one, 15 to 20 games. But then you see people that I've got 175, and it's like, have you played them all? That's not the point.
Right. I don't like to own things I don't use. My threshold for buying something is it's either real cheap or it's something I'm just going to play 3, 4, 5 or more times. That's my thing. And everything else, you can get such a wide array of experiences just by playing games with other people. And in a lot of ways, it's better because they will teach you the rules, you can glean some of the strategy from them, and you can get a feeling for how games are actually intended to be played.
Yeah. And I think the danger with having so many games is that you end up trying to play through the games to get through them and not having the luxury or the enjoyability of learning the different levels and the different depths of kind of strategy. Let's face it, if you go back to something like Monopoly, you played it 20 million times with your parents, but you knew exactly how you were going to play things. You knew exactly you knew exactly what your strategy was going to be. You knew exactly when you were going to play a card. You knew you learned how other people were going to play. And sometimes with you having 175 board games behind you, which isn't me, not yet, you end up rushing through playing a game once to just say, well, I've played that one because I want to get it off my pile of shame, which you hear an awful lot of. Pile of shame. It wasn't video game. PlayStation Plus, I've got a pile of 50, 70 games I've not played, and you got 30 hours each. I'm never going to play them until I retire. But you see board games now saying, well, my first promise is not to buy as many board games as I did last year because I'm going to end up not playing kind of any of them. So I can understand. If you're getting them all played, Brandon, then hats off to you. You're...
I will say... There's another advantage to just having a handful and playing a lot at shops.
Yeah.
You can save your money to buy art to make board games. I'm a young man. I just started my career a few years ago. I gotta make it happen somehow.
So is that what you're doing then? You're kind of, I will play games for and scrimp and save as much as possible because art's expensive. Art costs an absolute fortune. I mean,
well, I've got friends who help me do this, and I've found a lot of wonderful professionals who are able to handle art pretty well and for a reasonable cost. But yeah, it's still something you gotta think ahead. It's not even the overall thing. It's that you have to pay for a lot before you go to the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Especially when you're relatively unproven.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen that before. I've seen the kind of, I'm not backing that person because they haven't had any projects out. But as strange as well that I've also seen is they've not had any projects out, but they also haven't backed that many projects as well. So I've seen that kind of come up quite a few times. Do you back regularly yourself on Kickstarter, or is it something that you kind of dip into now and again?
I actually have backed quite a few Kickstarters. Now, a lot of them I'll just do to get on the newsletter because I like keeping up with things. But if I see something like by a friend of mine or something that looks really, really, really good, I will go in for the full thing. Like, I want to say the last one that I backed was Stellar Leap because I knew Carla was doing that and I wanted to back that.
Yeah.
Because I've been following Weird Giraffes and what her and Nick have been doing, and they're cool people. So I wanted to see that all the way through.
Yeah,
that's like conditions under which I'll go in for a game.
Yeah, Carla was on the show just before, or I think in the same week that Stellar Leap was kind of launching, and she was a joy to have on. Genuinely, just lovely lady to have a good old chat with, and the energy and the enthusiasm that she had for a game. And it's one of these things is you kind of end up getting involved in the project, or you don't mean to get involved in the project because you know that they're kind of you chat with them a little bit away from the podcast, and you find out that you kind of are almost willing it to kind of fund. Because it's like when you have a guest, it's like you automatically become almost like one of my surrogate children. And if I'm looking at the campaign, it's like, no, do this, no, do that. And when you see them fund, you're like, yes, that's so good. It's so fantastic. So it's I think she's currently prototyping her next game, Fire in the Library.
Which I saw a prototype of at Protospiel Atlanta, which is between our two cities, or pretty close to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Did it?
They had that in the works in October.
Oh, I've heard she's very excited by it, but I've also heard there's been a little bit of buzz about it on the social media from the people that I've seen that managed to get their hands on it. It seems to be a lot of fun has been kind of had so far. Absolutely. What else have there anything else that you backed recently? I mean, would you, with your kind of, you said yourself, your minimalist kind of view on life, lifestyle and things like that, are you the type of guy that's got any kind of CMON games in your closet? Is there any of those there?
I've actually got to double check that to see if I've got CMON on one of these boxes.
Oh dear.
Oh no, I don't think I do. I don't think I do. I had to think about that for a second.
You've not got any kind of like big box games or anything like that, no?
No, although I will say, well, no, I don't really have any big box games. I'm having to think about what qualifies as big box to board gamers.
I would say a big box I think it's a big box. I think if you look at a box and it's not a small, I think to me a big box board game would be a game with a reasonable amount of cardboard and also a reasonable amount of miniatures. So like Dinosaur Island, Wasteland Express Delivery Service, Rising Sun. I'd charge them as kind of your big box games. Humongous box games, that's like Kingdom Death, isn't it? And Gloomhaven.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't own any yet.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, what's your current kind of, you mentioned kind of prototypes, but is there stuff you're playing at the moment? I mean, have you played the likes of, Rising Sun? Have you seen kind of Gloomhaven or anything like that then?
No, a lot of what I've had access to lately is stuff that's going on my Discord, like State of Wonder is something going on by Emil. I don't actually. I'm trying to think about whether you've spoken to him yet.
No, I haven't. No, not spoken to Emil yet. But by all means, send him my way. Would be interested. Always interested in speaking to people all the time. So you, as you said, is it more kind of the prototype type of thing then? Are you? I mean, is there anything that you're playing that at the moment that you're kind of really enjoying then?
Okay, I'm going to fess up to a guilty pleasure.
Go on then, right, okay, wait, okay. Yeah?
Okay, so just now very recently became my girlfriend was like, I want you to play this game, and it's called Marry Mr. Darcy, and it's like a Kickstarter from like 5 years or something, and the whole concept is to like make yourself attractive to potential suitors. I think that's like the last thing I've played, but because she likes it, and it's a pretty good game, and it's extremely funny, we'll keep doing that.
Just podcast ends there. No.
Podcast ends.
That's it. Finished. No. No, you don't judge.
Podcast
you can't
answers.
judge. You can't. No. I mean, people like what they like. That's the whole point of board games. If everybody liked the same thing on board games, then all you would get 1,500 copies of Gloomhaven on people's shelves, and that would be it. Or, viticulture or something.
My real answers, my eternal favorites, are actually a lot more common answers, like Pandemic, Twilight Struggle, because that's on Steam. I've played that a lot.
All right, okay.
Played that like a lot. I got a history buff friend who does not play board games to play that with me.
Oh, okay.
He was just super into the theme. I'm like, all right, do you want to play this? I'll teach you how it works. It's going to take like forever for us to, for me to teach you this, because this game is really complicated, but...
Katie from Katie's Game Corner will be so thrilled to hear that the Twilight Struggle's getting continually to get played, because she's like a huge fan of that game.
It's a really good game. I think like the only thing that scares people off is if you play it alone, it's like a 10-15 game learning curve.
Yeah.
If you play it with someone who knows what they're doing, it's still like a 5 game learning curve.
Yeah.
Before you're making coherent strategies.
But
once you know what all the cards do, and once you've got an idea of like which regions to take control of when you're playing as the US or the USSR, it helps a lot.
Yeah. But it's going back to what we said earlier on. If you've got a massive game collection and if you're only playing a game once in order to get it played, you sometimes don't learn these little intricacies that can elevate a game from just being rather fun and enjoyable to be something you can become. I have to play this game. You can become obsessed about it. To the same level you see people, learning strategies on Magic and things like that. That kind of knowing the meta game and how to kind of play it, which is kind of interesting. Do you have your own copy? You got your own cardboard copy of Twilight Struggle as well then?
I wish I did. I only have the Steam version right now, because like all I've got in my home is my brother's in my spare room, and he won't play Twilight Struggle. So I'm like, well, I guess I'll just play it on Steam and find some friends online.
And is it your place or is it your brother's place?
It's my place.
And I think there's a potentiality to maybe say, right, okay, what's your brother's name?
His name is Austin.
Austin. So you just say, Austin, listen,
it's
Twilight Struggle, or it's packing your bags and going. You just play the guilt card and just say, listen, if you really liked me as a brother, you would sit down, you would play this game. And he'll love it,
I might just have to do that. And if I get a phone call, from home, if I get a phone call from Nashville, I'll say, Mom, I had to kick him out.
And it's like, what?
He wouldn't play Twilight Struggle with me.
And it's like...
He said something about having to go to work.
You can just imagine him shouting from the corner, I can't believe you played the mum card. But no, I mean...
It's more overpowered than the China card.
It's in a special sealed envelope. It's the Twilight Struggle Legacy game. I'm gonna get the president's mum on the phone. Oh, you can't do that, you actual scumbag. But is that a what?
If they make a legacy game, I'm gonna like take a month off and I'll have a beard. It'll be ridiculous.
Oh dear. Um, so you obviously you kickstarted your first game, and then from the experiences that you obviously kind of gained from kickstarting your first game, you started the blog.
That's
What
right.
made you decide to kind of sit down and say, well, I'm going to I'm going to write this down, because there's other people out there that are writing, let's talk about the Jamie Stegmaier in the room
Right.
who talks about his Kickstarter. So what made you think, that you were just, I'm going to go and write a blog? Was it to give a different perspective? Was it maybe giving it from the viewpoint of somebody that was fairly green to the industry and kind of learning all these new things when you were doing the first kind of Kickstarter campaign?
That second one pretty much hits it on the head, because I have read every single post of of Jamie Stegmaier's Kickstarter lessons, and his book too. I've read a lot of James Maith. I've read a lot of, you know, just design blogs, board game design labs, stuff like that. And I've found that the one thing I felt like was missing, or the one thing that I could contribute, was just to help fill that gap from what I call like the 0 to 2 year gap. I feel like that's what scares off a lot of people who are potentially interested in doing something like this. I wanted to do something where I assume you knew nothing about the board game industry. Like, it was just a wild idea you had, and you had no idea how to get something manufactured or published or marketed. And I'm like, I'm gonna write down every single thing I can think of to help people do that, to help people go from knowing nothing to being published. And I'm going to do this in a really systematic way that people can follow. That was the idea. And it took me a while to find that particular voice. It took me a few months to decide that's the angle I wanted to approach it from.
Was it a bit daunting knowing that you were going to be after the works? Obviously the dev diaries that were being put out by, that were out there for you to say, well, put your voice out there. Obviously almost putting your flag to the mast kind of thing and seeing what was happening. Was that kind of like a daunting prospect? Did you at any point kind of write stuff out and then say, no, I'm going to how many rewrites did you do? Did you do a lot of rewrites, or were you fairly confident to say, I'm just going to put this out there and see what people think?
It's always daunting to put your ideas out there. It's nerve-wracking. I mean, you want people to like them, you want people to find them helpful. I've done some rewrites. A lot of it doesn't look like saved drafts filling up WordPress or a bunch of Word documents. A lot of it just looks like me hitting the backspace button for a really long time and starting from the beginning. I started shutting that down real quick, because a lot of that just comes from a misguided belief that you have like nothing to contribute, or that somebody's going to do it better. The best way I know to fight back against the urge to just rewrite and rewrite and rewrite is to pick a subject, just a good one. Don't even try and find a perfect one. Just find a good one. Ask around if you have to. Write an outline, choose a word count, and just hit that outline and hit that word count. And then proofread it and then publish it. Like, a lot of why I keep the timeline I do is just so I keep it going and I don't have time to super critically tear my work down before it ever gets a chance to be up there.
No, I mean,
That's
yeah.
part of why I do 2 a week.
Yeah. I think sometimes you just gotta, especially if you're self-publishing, I think it can be difficult to not over-edit or not to scrap entire bits, but at the same time it's also having the self-discipline to run with an idea which didn't necessarily be the idea that you started off with.
That's right.
I'm dilly-dallying with a bit of writing myself, and it's a review. It's a review for an older board game, and it'll be going out somewhere. I don't think it'll be going out on the We're Not Wizard website, but it is kind of going, well, am I trying to go for a particular angle, and now I've noticed that my angle's changed about like 5 times.
Yeah, it takes a while to find your voice.
Yeah.
I mean, like the current series that I'm doing, and both of the series that I'm doing, Dev Diary took 6 months of writing for me to come up with doing that.
Yeah.
And then start to finish took another 3 months after that. And yeah, sometimes you just have to put a bunch of work out there just to see what works for you and what works for your voice and your style.
And have you found has that helped you to strategize for the up and coming kind of campaign that you're going to be launching then? Has it helped you kind of reassess the kind of the actions that you're going to take on this campaign? Because I take it this was based around War Company, which was your deck game. So have you looked back on what you've written and actually said, well, do you know what? This time I should actually be doing this, or I should actually be doing that, or I should be doing something slightly differently?
Yeah, I've had moments like that. Like I was thinking just pure Warco up until about March this year when I started working on Byways, my second game.
Yeah.
And I have gone back and I've actually used. Okay, how would I put it this way? Like, when you earnestly try to teach somebody something, that is itself a way of learning yourself. So, like, I've cranked out all this documentation on, like, how I think, best way to spread the word on social media, or best way to reach out to people. Here's a template. Or, just some emotional pitfalls to look out for, because that stuff's important too. I've written that down, read my own work, and I'm like, there's an area here where I need to actually do what I said. It happens.
I've seen it. I remember being on a sales course, and the guy that was doing the sales course, it was just me and him. it kind of dawned on him quite quickly that half the stuff that he should have been covering in the sales course, he maybe should have done more of himself, because it might meant he would have had more than one person on his sales course. And it was more of what epiphany is the guy going to have today, not the epiphany that I was going to have, because I was sitting there going, well, I kind of know a lot of this, but there's still stuff that I'm learning. But he was like going, yeah, I really need to. And I'm just like sitting there looking at him going, well, maybe we should just sit next to each other instead of you sitting in you telling me what to kind of do kind of thing. But no, I mean, I see. War Company, let's touch on that, because we kind of glazed over it quite quickly, and it's like one of these things that's like, it funded. What is it? What is it? Is it a card game? Is it a board game? Is it your big box game? Is it a miniatures game? Tell us a little bit about kind of War Company itself.
Okay, so Warco is an expandable card game, pretty much just a Fantasy Flight friendly way of saying living card game.
Yeah.
In the vein of, let's say, Netrunner, it is based on a sci-fi corporate apocalypse. And the whole concept of that game is it's just this really nasty war of attrition where you use your deck of 50 cards to run your opponent or opponents out of their deck of 50 cards. You can attack them to make them discard faster, or you can stave off your own losses, or a combination of all of those things. Or you can start taking up their resources to leave them vulnerable if you take all their defenses away, stuff like that.
Oh, right, okay. And I noticed is it kind of like different decks and different factions on there, or is it just this?
Yes, it comes in 6 different decks, and they're Bruiser, Conspirator, Guerrilla, Militant, Trickster, and Wildcard.
Oh, right, okay.
And you can swap cards between each of the decks if you like, but they come in those particular sets because each one's got a little bit of a strategy on its own.
Was it a limited run that you did of Warco when you did it then? Was it just for the fulfillment of it? You still got quite a few kind of copies of the game left?
I've still got a little bit of it sitting around, yeah.
All right, okay. Here's a question for you then. Is it, once you've done the Kickstarter, because you've done the successful Kickstarter, is it then difficult to keep the game that you've done kind of going and keep the game that you've done kind of alive.
Yes. Yes, it absolutely is. Like, one of the things I didn't really understand initially was that games tend to blow up really quickly around the launch, and it's hard to keep them alive unless you actively grow a community, unless you actively are talking to people about that on a regular basis. And honestly, you need a sales funnel too. You need to constantly be bringing in new people who haven't heard of it, or people who have heard of it and haven't, actually bought it yet. It's tough to do at first. And after, I would say, March or April, I just started putting it on autopilot. I let the Warco social media run, and I'm like, I'm just going to focus on making a second game, and then maybe some more after that. Who knows what will happen?
Yeah. Do you think that's is that maybe one of the biggest flaws with Kickstarter, is that it's all about the build-up to getting a campaign together, to raising awareness, to getting the game funded. But then where Kickstarter not fails, but it provides the platform for the funding, but it doesn't necessarily help with the tail side of things, as in once you get your product in there, it's kind of taking it to the next level and then potentially getting it into like a regular kind of retail market. Because I see a lot of businesses talk about getting the retail tail, getting their game published, signing it with kind of like publishers, and having their game kind of hitting the stores on a regular basis. And one of the things that's aimed at Kickstarter is, once even the most successful games out there, if they've not had a second run, then they can disappear into obscurity, kind of thing.
It's true.
It's a kind of a strange situation. I mean, is that with? I mean, is your long-term plan to kind of get into kind of like a distribution model, or are you going to stick with the kind of the Kickstarter piece for now?
I'm still figuring out what works. I'm still experimenting and gathering data, but I want to just agree with you for a minute on, it absolutely can be a problem for people to go into Kickstarter and have no idea what they're going to do afterward.
Yeah.
It's easy to make a big splash, to build up a community, to tell people that this is the end, this is it, this is what it takes to get this game made, and then to just completely let it collapse or fade into obscurity. I feel like if you are going to make it as a game developer, from my observations, you either have to build up a really big backlog so that you can just get a little bit at a time on a whole bunch of things, or you have to start doing other services as well, which is what a lot of people will do. Like, they'll do preview videos, stuff like that, or they'll help people with board game related services, like business with marketing and logistics or shipping, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I've seen Board Game Spotlight, James Hudson, Derek Funkhauser. They're doing, they're doing the helping with the marketing. They're helping, social media for businesses. They're helping with reviews, and I think playtesting is even something that they're doing. And these are all services that you can actually purchase from them. They're not just friends, they're not just friends helping kind of friends out. So they're trying to do the business model. I mean, I guess the other thing was looking at something like, say, Gloomhaven, massive success. Isaac needed to do another Kickstarter in order to get a reprint done of the game.
It happens. It happens. Yeah. You can raise a bunch of money, and come time to actually print it again, your money was eaten up in taxes and other business projects, and you have to raise more. Or some people might even do that on purpose. It really depends on what they decide to do, or how they choose to run their business, what their model is. I feel like you've either got to get into distribution, or if you direct sell it, the difference between your game and anybody else's game has nothing to do with mechanics. It has nothing to do even with the theme. It's got everything to do with, like, who's playing it with who. It's got everything to do with relationships and how people actually feel when they're playing the game. What you need I feel to sell a game long term, to go long after that Kickstarter, to get years and years and years of play, is just a community of people who just want to keep playing. And it doesn't even have to be a big one. It can just be a small,
No.
dedicated community.
Yeah. I mean,
And I'll take a small community. I'll take a small, dedicated community over a big, disengaged one any day.
yeah. I mean, you've got people like, say, Tim Fowers did Burgle Brothers and Now Boarding and Paperback, and he's got his website, and you see it ticking along. You go back in, and he's got a bigger and bigger portfolio, and people seem to. Burgle Brothers is still getting out there. He seems to be in this thing where he's running print runs of his own games to keep things going. He's got his nice little kind of distribution for himself, which seems to be kind of working out quite well for him, which is good.
And people talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, we've had him on the show, and he was an interesting guy to have on, because he's still, obviously, for some things he's hitting the Kickstarter route, like, Now Boarding was his latest one, but that unlike a lot of games, there's going to be a tail on it. I'm going to be able to go into, if I can go on and, okay, I might be waiting a little while for maybe Burgle Brothers while there's maybe another reprint, but I definitely know I'm going to get my hands on a copy. Whereas, say, what's this? I saw, was it Buy Air, Sea and Land recently, which was like huge, massive big box Kickstarter that I've seen put out on somebody's table, and it looks like they were basically building an extension for their house, but the game looks absolutely glorious. And I was wondering, am I ever going to be able to get my hands on that game without having to go for a trade on Board Game Geek or try and get a copy on kind of eBay? It's kind of interesting that way.
Yeah, it really depends on just the long-term business model, and a lot of that stuff you just can't see on Kickstarter.
No. But I mean, connecting up to Kickstarter, let's talk about let's move on, and let's not go the low way, let's go the highway, and let's talk about some highways and byways. That's the worst segue ever, but I've decided
we're gonna roll.
We're just gonna go.
We're gonna ride with that.
That's what we're gonna do. You've explained a little bit about Warco, which I'm guessing that you can go on and you can buy from your website if you're interested in purchasing copies.
That's right.
Yes, you can.
That's right.
You're talking about, obviously, highways and byways. This is going to be the next project which you're looking at kind of a couple of months away before you're going to be putting that on Kickstarter. So would you like to tell the good people, mostly Americans now as well, Brandon, do you know that we've got more people downloading from the US of A than we have from the UK? So it must be either...
Really?
Yeah, I can't believe it. I looked at this. I was like, oh my goodness. I can't even believe they understand what I'm saying. But I guess, that's because there's more of you in America than there is in the UK. Or either that, we're scaring off the UK audience. But do you want to tell us all a little bit about kind of highways and byways? I mean, how do you go from kind of putting together something like Warco into the highways and byways instead?
When I made Warco, I made this game of rules and exceptions and twists and turns, and it was a lot of fun, and I had a great time making it, but I wanted to do something different with Highways and Byways. And Highways and Byways is more of a family board game, plays in about 45 to 60 minutes for 2 to 4 players.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea is that you're just taking the most epic road trip across the USA that you can imagine. Like you're just getting your whole family, or you're getting your college friends, and you're just beater of a first car, and you're just driving just to see how far you can go.
All right, okay.
That's the whole concept. And how that actually manifests itself in gameplay is that you get to, at the beginning of the game, select routes from limited options by drafting, and you put pieces on those routes. You must complete those routes in their entirety and circle back to your home before anyone else does. However, you've got a hand of event cards, and whatever is on the event card that gets pulled from your hand, more on that in a second, is what happens to you during your turn. So it's not just like you pick your route and you just drive and drive and drive and it's dot counting. Like you have to strategize around these event cards that you get in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
How that works is the opponent clockwise of you just pulls one out of your hand at the beginning of every turn, and whatever's on it, positive or negative, happens to you. At the end of your turn, you get to choose whether to move all your spaces or to trade in unmoved spaces, like just basically drive a little less. You can trade that in to swap out cards from your hand.
Ah, right, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
and a couple of...
No, on you.
So it's like...
Yeah. On you go.
A couple... Like, the only other two things I think in the game is that every 5 turns, you will pass your hands clockwise.
Yeah.
So you will want to make your hand better and better and better up until the point that you want to make it worse and worse and worse and then pass it off. And it's all like it's a little tricky balancing act. And every once in a while, the highway that you want to travel will be undergoing construction. And you have to plan around that.
So how is that? Is that done through an event card? Is that through the deck or...
That's done by construction cards, which are 5 letter cards that correspond to letters on the board.
All right.
And once they're all used up, you play out the rest of that turn, shuffle that deck, and then everybody passes their event hands. So you've got it counting off in the bottom right as you're getting closer to passing your hands.
So it sounds very much kind of risk reward and deck management. As in, there's certain points where you can travel further. If you're traveling further, you can get ahead in your objective, but you risk having less control over your hand going over and potentially opening yourself up to setbacks on your route.
That's right.
Or you can slow right down, manage your hand more effectively, but the risk with doing that is if you build up a fantastic hand, if it's on turn number 4, then you're going to end up handing over kind of pure gold to the person that you're kind of competing against.
That's right. It's a lot of hand management, kind of pushing your luck a little bit too. But and like each vehicle will have its own special unique ability, usually related to event cards. So like it'll be immune to a certain negative thing, or when you get a positive, it's even more positive. Or every time the hands are passed, you get to move extra spaces. So you kind of also want to move in accordance with what your vehicle does too.
Oh right, okay. Do you have little model cars then?
I want to do that in the Kickstarter. For the review copies, I'm using pawns because the Game Crafter cars are too big.
Yeah, okay.
And I ordered a bunch of them too. I ordered a bunch of cars before actually measuring them. But no, I'm sending out pawns for now, but I would love to do little plastic cars as like a low stretch goal on Kickstarter.
Did you go a bit car crazy then? Did you go, I'll have 100 of these?
Well, all I'm saying is, do you need like 48 little plastic cars right now? Because that's how many I've got in my closet.
My 5-year-old would say yes, and I would probably say yes as well, because if we could have 24 each, then we would be happy. I mean, are you looking at kind of, what's the last game I've seen that's got tiny little cars? Formula D has got tiny little plastic cars in it. I take it the ones that you've got are bigger than the Formula D ones. They're only about 2 centimeters long at the most.
2 centimeters. Yeah, that's probably about as much as it could be on that board.
All right, okay. Well, all you need to do is go out and buy 150 copies of Formula D. Then just help yourself to the cars from there.
I'm just going to ship 150 copies of Formula D to like a factory in China and ask them to sort the parts for me.
Just get like a marker pen and just, scrib out all the bits of the track that you don't need. And then just
we run a cost-efficient operation at Pangea.
No.
And an eco-friendly one too.
Absolutely. Are you gonna have different Are you gonna have different types of transport? Are you gonna have like electric cars in there, or are you gonna have the ability to have like wagons and stuff?
I think you'll actually really like this. And there are 6 different vehicles, and they're all modeled after like really old, late 80s, early 90s kind of just beat up vehicles. Off the top of my head, there is an ancient Honda Civic that is immune to accidents and repairs.
Of course it is.
There's a Jeep that smells like diesel and is immune to traffic and weather. I want to say, just thinking off the top of my head, shoot, I made this. I should be able to think of it. There's 5.0. That's an old beat up Crown Vic. That's what we use for the police cars here, and a lot of the times they'll sell them at auctions,
yeah.
And people will be able to snap them up real cheap because they're decent cars for what they are. Well, we got one of those. There's a station wagon. There is like an old school like one of those family vacation movies station wagon. Like one of those is in there.
All right. Okay.
We've got a rusty pickup truck. Because why not? And a minivan with soccer ball sized dents in it.
Oh my goodness. You need a mule or a horse.
I would love to do that as a stretch goal. Like just introduce more jokey kind of vehicles. Just
anything at all. You know, penny farthing bike. I mean, that would be. They'd be immune to running out of petrol and stuff or gasoline. Yeah, do you have to fuel up then? I mean, is there losing out in gasoline? Is that one of the things that you have to do, or?
Believe it or not, I actually was playing around with both gas, money, and hotel mechanics way earlier in the game, but I actually ended up stripping them out because they were complicating it a lot and kind of slowing it down. So no, your cars never run out of gas.
That's pretty good.
Cars never run out of gas.
That's pretty cool. Is it? I mean, do you have to be quite strict with the control and the mechanics then? I mean, you said you've just said I've stripped out a couple of mechanics that people would I would have naturally thought that would have been part of the game. Do you end up, when you're doing your kind of design or putting all the ideas together, do you put all the ideas in and then see what sticks? And then you have to almost kind of shave down, like whittling a bit of wood down all the bits which you think aren't going to work until you have the final shape of the game.
That's how it worked with Warco, which started with like 500 cards, and I turned it into 300 by the end. Byways, I just started with a map. I started with a map, which I simplified after I actually initially created that map. And then I started adding a lot more mechanics to it. Complex event cards. I started adding a lot of construction, gas, money, hotels, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the point where I started stripping things away again. And then I just kept stripping things away until pretty much the end of the game. The last thing I added was what is now like a flagship mechanic, involving being able to trade in movement for discards at the end of your turn.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the last thing that got added in.
Did this all come from playtesting? I mean, with you...
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, is playtesting one of the things that you really, really kind of get involved in? You mentioned Protospiel. So are you someone, is that what... are you always, playtest? It's like, where's Brandon? He's playtesting again, kind of thing.
I do playtest a lot. What my method is right now is I'll play as many games by myself as it takes, half games, quarter games, whatever, just to get it functioning. And I won't let another human being see it until it is a functioning game. Like, it needs to finish without quitting. And then, once I do that, I'll say to my brother, you want to help me on this? You want to help me on this? And I'll talk him into doing that. We'll play it a little bit. And then once we work on that more and more and more, and it actually starts looking good, then I start talking to people online through Discord, and we start playing it through Tabletop Simulator.
All right, okay.
Get better and better and better at that. I start playing it with family, start going to local game shop, get a few people to play it there. then designers at Protospiel. That's what I did, and that will probably become a tradition at this point. Then more Discord playtesting. Then blind playtests while, like, during the late stage of the game. Just release it online and get people to start doing that on Tabletop Sim.
Yeah.
Or send people a copy.
Yeah.
And then after all of that, I will sit there and I'll play 100 games until I'll actually call it done. Because that, to me, like, after it's been blind playtested, you still need to make sure that there are no weird edge cases that will ruin your game. And the only way to do that is a large sample size. They don't even have to be blind playtests. Just you sit there and you test it a lot, or you get somebody to do that for you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at the back of your mind, are you also, I mean, during the playtesting, do you get a lot of kind of ideas, feedback that has helped really form the game and change the game? I mean, is there stuff in the playtesting where somebody's just went, you know, you should be doing this, and you'd be like,
absolutely,
yeah, thanks.
I've changed up probably half the event cards explicitly based on feedback from, like, Protospiel.
Mm-hmm.
I've changed even more than that from Discord too. I've reduced the number of spaces on the board from like 400 to like 250. I cut like 30-40% away just to decrease visual clutter.
Yeah.
Because of, you know, some designers agreed it should. I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. It cut down on playtime. Yeah, I made a lot of changes. That space one actually is really big because the byway cards, all 72 of them, reference the board game map to tell you where things are. So if you change the board,
you have to change the card.
You change every single one of them.
And that includes, I take it, all the your highway constructions, any events and everything like that. Does that sometimes reference too? Okay.
Oh yeah. I've cut the construction from 10 letters down to 5,
mm-hmm.
and that actually turned out to be really good because it became a lot more relevant.
Yeah. In terms of, like, say the design and how it looks, with obviously Warco being kind of quite scientific, were you conscious of trying to going for something of a different style, a more kind of family friendly, cartoony type style? Or, I mean, what were your thoughts behind the kind of the design aspect of it?
Warco is this weird, dark, and at the same time colorful apocalypse world. Like, think like Mad Max Fury Road, bright colors,
yeah.
You know, dismal future. Byways, okay, so there is this very specific time in American culture, and maybe this is global, I'm not really sure, but there is this very specific time in American culture in, like, the late 60s, 70s, early 80s that you see captured in postcards and old hotel brochures, and even in the architecture of some of the older motels on the road that I've been in, that, like, speaks to this golden age of travel. Bright, sharp colors, and very specific kinds of fonts. What I aimed for was a nostalgic 70s feeling after all was said and done.
Okay. And you can see that from the artwork, which we'll put links to the show notes so that people can see the kind of the art in it. It's very there's a little, wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of lens flare going on, to be honest.
It's very stylized,
mirror shades and stuff like that. But obviously you've got the game is the good old map of the Americas, basically. But it's quite bright.
Pretty much.
It's pretty. It's bright. It's colourful.
Oh yeah. The box was the brightest object in my living room for a while. I'm not even joking. Like, it just printed brighter than I thought it would.
You didn't have to bother putting the lights on at night. You just, like, opened a couple of cartons. No. Just let highways and byways kind of sit there.
I was like, wow, this is really... They really were not joking when they said gloss finish.
You, like, walk into work and, like, the other people at your work are saying, Brandon, did you go on a sunbed?
Yeah, you've got a sunburn.
You've got like a healthy glow about you. You're sitting there bright red, looking like Optimus Prime, with the flame marks down the side. Going, no, I've been playtesting my game again. But I mean, it is a different look. It's more of it's a beautiful kind of colourful kind of box looking, and the artwork inside of it is really kind of impressive. And it's kind of something that if you put on the table, people would kind of notice, and you probably draw people to it, and they would go, well, what's kind of going on? With Warco, you had all the different factions. At the back of your mind, when you've been putting together highways and byways, has there been an inkling of you maybe thinking about potential expansions that you could bring to the game and things like that? Because obviously you've got your cards. You've still got quite a lot of cards in terms of how the game does. Have you thought about kind of expansions? You've obviously mentioned the kind of the vehicles as stretch goals, but have you already mapped out additional things that you could do?
I've thought about expansions on both the games I've worked on so far, as well as other games that I would like to get to too. Like Warco, I've thought about making more cards. Wow, more cards later on in the future and releasing them as like a 7th or 8th deck. But I would be more excited, frankly, to do a different version of Byways, like an expansion of Byways that was set in, say, Europe or Asia or Australia or South America or something like that.
Yeah.
Or even like just making a road trip Canada, and you would just like overlay it over the top of the American board, or Mexico. I mean, either one.
Yeah. No, that would work. That would be cool. You could have your different vehicles as well.
Just the basics would still work. I would just have to find the right voice for different regions so that I could keep that Byways tone, but also find the right cultural voice for another place.
Yeah, no.
It's really easy for me to lean into that old American lore.
Mm-hmm.
It would be harder for me to do the same thing for Europe or Australia or anywhere else. I could do it if I read enough, though, and play tested with people around the area.
Well, I think that gives you an excuse if the Kickstarter takes off for you to take, a couple of months in Australia, a couple of months in Canada, a couple of months in Europe. And you could put it down and kind of write it off on tax bills as kind of like necessary investigation expenses kind of thing.
Right.
And see if
I'm going to just like put that down as like research trip, and I'm going to get a call from the Tennessee Department of Revenue. Like
Exactly. Did you really need to have all these hotel rooms in France? Yes. Yes, we did.
Yes, this was critical to my board game design business.
Yes, we did. I definitely needed to go to Alsace. Definitely. And the skiing, skiing was, just one of these things.
Yeah, it's like they're just reading through my transactions. 1 Delta airline ticket to Hawaii.
Well, people drive about Hawaii.
I mean, they're not going to build a bridge from California anytime soon.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I got what I'm expected to do, swim. But
that's my backup plan for getting to the UK in a pinch.
That's it. I'm planning on doing an expansion to my board game, so please send me air tickets. Thanks very much.
I'm gonna just like check myself in a bag, and that's how I'm gonna get there.
Do that. There's probably people that have already done that. Probably, but ended up in prison. To be perfectly honest, and you don't.
Yeah, I'm not gonna try that. I feel like I would just get stopped by the TSA, and they'd be like, "What are you even doing? Just go home."
Especially as they see you walking up to the baggage thing, and you've cut holes in the bottom of the case. You see this case just walking up towards like the baggage rail, and it's like the guy just leans down, just gives the thing a tap, and then just goes, "Brandon, what? We know you're in there." Not me, someone else.
I'm just a suitcase.
I'm just a normal suitcase. It's like, you're not going to sing that I'm a Suitcase song, are you, Brandon? Oh, why not?
Is that an actual song? I might have to Google.
I don't think it is. It probably is. There's probably something.
Somebody's probably made
Somebody
it.
probably has made it. It's probably the Flight of the Conchords guys have made I'm a Suitcase.
I'm looking on Spotify right now.
Check it just now. There probably is. There probably is a Spotify playlist for songs you should be playing if you're ever trapped in a suitcase.
There isn't, but there is a playlist with 122 followers called Suitcases and Staircases. So,
Oh my goodness.
there you go.
It's just a gift that keeps on giving. Obviously, unless you're an artist, and then you get nothing off Spotify. Controversial. Have you thought about prices and things like that then for highways and byways?
Core reward's going to be $49, and I'm still working out the shipping on that, but I'm going to try and keep the shipping as low as I humanly can.
Mm-hmm. Have you,
I'm going to try and make it free for the United States, if at all possible. I just need to crunch some numbers on that.
and what about things like into Europe? I mean, are you looking at the kind of the customs friendly option and things like that as something that you've got to consider as well?
I'm definitely doing customs friendly. It's not as hard to arrange as you might think. It just looks really intimidating from the outside. You can do that through like Games Quest really easily. And as far as like getting it into Europe, UK, Canada, I would say probably like $5 more than the US. Again, gotta run numbers.
Yeah.
Probably another 5 on top of that for Australia or the rest of the world.
Okay. And the $49, that'll get you kind of like the base game, which seems to be, you've got your map, you've got your cards, you've got your potential little cars once you get sorted out for that. You've got your donkey and your penny farthing and your I take it you've got an Evil Knievel stretch goal as well, so you can go across the Grand Canyon.
I do now.
Have you got the A-Team van? Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna have to make a call for the rights.
I think you're gonna have to, because I can imagine the A-Team van, the road trip. Wow, and they would just be like impervious except to like snacks. There'd be a milk.
I might just do like an ice cream truck or something.
There'd be an event card that like would mean that if the A-Team van got like milk near it, then B.A. Baracus would freak out and he'd refuse to drive for 3 turns. Oh, just think about it. Anyway, so you're thinking about potentially, is it March? I think you said in the green room about potential launch for that.
Last week of March is what I'm shooting for.
Okay. When you're, I mean, I guess this isn't a question that comes up. When you're doing the launch window for the Kickstarter, do you consciously make yourself aware of what is also going to be launching at the same time?
That's why I haven't pinned down a specific date, because a lot of people wait just a little bit longer before they actually give you that date. But the idea does, like, it's crossed my mind.
Yeah.
For me, it would be the difference between, say, like a March 19th, March 20th, March 26th, March 27th, or even April 3, April 4 kind of thing.
Yeah.
It wouldn't change my overall timetable too much, but you know, you don't want to share the day with the next rising sun if you can avoid it, just because that will suck the oxygen right out of the room.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've seen people that have been involved. I mean, this year there was Rising Sun, there was Seventh Continent, there was Kingdom Death.
Oh my goodness.
You know, there was all these huge hitters coming out, which, as you said, kind of sucked the oxygen out of a lot of campaigns. I think the middle of January, is it not? Hate is coming out, which for a campaign which everybody's going, oh no. I don't think I've checked it out fully, but I know it's like the next big box game that Simon are going to be doing, which has led, when I've read in the Kickstarter community, people talking, oh, I'm launching mid-January, and the first thing people are saying is, you are aware that Hate is launching mid-January, and they're like, no. So,
Well, here's the thing. I don't believe that there's any month that totally precludes you from succeeding, or even if you share a day with somebody big, every factor that you can have on your side, you want to have on your side. Like, so that's why you don't launch at like 5 p.m. on a Sunday.
no. I think you have to be aware. I think there will be different communities that will build up around kind of like different products, and I think as long as you've kind of got that community behind you, then I think you have to expect some kind of effect on your campaign. If you're going to be sitting there and you're doing a card game and you've got a Seventh Continent kind of storming up behind you like a rhino, that's just had some sunny delight. You can expect it to kind of have an effect on how the campaign rolls, but I think it's very, very unpredictable because there's games out there that just seem to come from nowhere still and still seem to fund kind of very, very well. I think the last one I saw was Root, which was that strategy game. You'd like that. Did you see that? It was kind of like.
I feel like I've seen that come up.
It's kind of like a war game.
Lately.
Yeah, it's like a wargaming type game, but the artwork is very, very kind of seems to be child friendly. But from what I've heard about it, it's a very deep kind of tactical kind of game. So you would, I think you might like that. I don't think Austin would like it, but you might, you might like it.
You kind of have to love those games that will just conceal a little bit of how complicated they are in their art. Like Advance Wars, that's a video game, but that comes to mind.
Yeah.
That'll conceal its complexity in art. It's a brutally difficult game, if you're a kid anyway. It's been a long time since I played it.
It's been a long time since I've played it, but I was probably very old when I started playing it. If it was on I think it was the old Game Boy Advanced, potentially, I think.
I jumped in on Dual Strike, and then I also got the gritty and dark reboot of Days of Ruin.
Just leave it out, It's fine.
It was actually a good game, but but the story is really tough to read as an adult.
Yeah.
Like, it was okay when I was like 14, but it's tough to read as an adult.
Yeah.
I appreciate what they were trying to do, though. I really, really do.
Yeah, and I'm surprised it's not been rebooted.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it's not going to appear on. It'd be good if it was on the Switch. That'd be an interesting game on the Switch. But we've got.
Oh man, I've fallen behind on my video games lately.
I'm
now 2 consoles behind. I'm not cool anymore.
Well, I've just recently packed away the PlayStation 3, and the likes of because I just wasn't touching it. But I've still got my Wii U because you can put it on and it's fun. My youngest son, he's 5, and you can put on a Wii U game and say there you go, as long as it's not Bayonetta or something like that. He's fine. It's like there's Mario Land, there's Mario and Luigi, there's Mario Kart, there's anything along those lines. You can just jump on and play. So it's all really, really, really good fun.
Those games are an absolute joy if you're a kid.
Yeah, but they can be technically
or an adult.
But they can be technically good, kind of good fun as well, which is always good. Which I think is where we are. We kind of like we're getting there with board games. I think the gritty greyness that you see in a lot of video games nowadays, people are still willing to be very, very colourful on the board games, because a colourful looking board game is a thing of joy, because you're putting it on your table, you're not just putting it on your TV, which is an interesting thing. Which is why when you see, it's really strange, because when you get games like, say, Cuphead coming out, which is like this, almost like this interactive kind of almost Disney-esque kind of animation that came out, everybody going, look at it looks amazing. It's like, well, if you stepped into the board game space, you would see literally hundreds of differently illustrated games that are all joyous and fun and colourful and lovely and stuff like that. But
one of the beautiful things about board games as opposed to video games in that sense is that video games, at least what you see on the consoles, they're big productions. They need teams of 100 or 200 or 300. I mean, who even knows? And when you've got that much capital involved, you have to play it safe, and safe means making mass market and gritty a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Or a Mario game. I mean, Odyssey was the exception, but that's because they've got so much power in that intellectual property that they can take risks and they can do stuff that's just wild. Board games, it's what you would call, I guess, a long tail product. You can reach out to any group of 500 or 1,000 people who have a very particular taste, and you can make something that is absolutely perfect for them and that will delight them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I mean, Andrew Burkett from Atheris, he's just released Supernatural Socks. which is
Supernatural Socks?
Which is a game about ghosts that steal socks. You know, whereas
what? Why not?
You know, whereas at the same time, you've also got Colossal Games releasing Western Legends, which is all about ye olde Wild West. So you know, those are two completely different styles of games, all very bright and all very colourful as well at the same time. So it's pretty cool. I'm very, very conscious of the time. Of the time, because it's been, you know, but it's if people have listened along today and they are interested in keeping an eye on your good self, where can they find you on the interweb nets, Mr. Rollins?
On the internet web nets. The easiest way to find me is either go to brandonthegamedev.com, that's the blog, or you can find me Instagram, Twitter, Facebook is Brandon Game Dev.
Okay.
And if you were really interested in Byways, and you want to see what I do with that Kickstarter, if you're interested in backing, you can always get to either the email form or the Kickstarter through bywaysgame.com/Kickstarter.
There you go. And we will make sure that all those, we'll put the notes in the show notes so that we've got notes to show. Okay? Mm-hmm. One last question, okay? You are heading off from Florida to Seattle. You're going on a road trip, okay?
Okay.
You have got to decide, you've a limited space because you're taking some supplies and you're just doing the whole driving, the couple of 1,000 miles or whatever it is, rather than take a plane like a sensible person. But you decide that you're going to take with you 3 board games. So what you do is you stop at Honest John's Oldie Board Game Emporium, and Honest John's Board Game Emporium, he's got a special offer on, and he just basically says you can buy 1 game and you'll get another 2 free. So faced with that, you look at Honest John's collection. He's got every single game that there has ever been in existence. He's got first editions, second editions, all the expansions. The only thing is, though, that you have filled up your car with so much stuff to take on your road trip, you have only now got space for 3 board games. Brandon, what 3 board games do you take with you on your road trip? Now, the rules are quite simple. It's like, you can take anything at all. You can ask for anything at all. It will be there. It will exist. And secondly, it doesn't matter on the number of players, because no matter where you stop off, whether it be a cheap motel or be a swanky resort or a nice restaurant, if you go in with a board game and you ask people to play, the answer is always going to be yes. What 3 games do you take with you, Brandon?
Oh shoot. Okay, I gotta grab Twilight Struggle. Like, that's not even a question.
Okay. That's number 1.
There's so much metagame around Pandemic, I gotta grab that too.
Pandemic.
Because it's gonna be fun to play with a lot of people.
Okay.
Probably Netrunner too. I'm gonna pick Netrunner
there you
as
go.
well. So those 3.
That's your 3. That's very, very quick. You sound like a man in a hurry. Stick your money on the desk, you get your 3 games, you jump into the car. You drive off down the road and Austin is running after you saying, "What'd you forget about me for?"
He's like, "You did." I'm like, I only had space for 3 board games. I don't know how I'm gonna play them, but see ya.
Exactly. Sorry, I don't have space for my brother. Thank you very, very much for coming on.
We'll get a rack for the top.
Exactly.
We'll tie him down.
We'll get a skateboard and a bit of rope. He can kind of like trail behind. That's a really terrible thing to say. I haven't even met your brother, so I'm sure he's a lovely guy.
He's a wonderful guy.
If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, then there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can go on to Twitter and you'll find us on We're Not Wizards. You can go on to Facebook and you'll find us on We're Not Wizards. You can go on to YouTube, because our lovely podcast hosts Podbean automatically put all our podcasts onto YouTube, and you can find us through, it is youtube.com/c/We're Not Wizards Tabletop Podcast. You can find us on all your various kind of podcast players. So there's Stitcher and Spreaker and Acast and little pod knife that we do like. If you like what you've listened to today, and there's no reason why you haven't, because Brandon has been an absolute joy to speak with, please jump on to Apple Podcasts, and if you like us a little bit, then please drop us a subscription, because that means that every time that somebody drops us a subscription, it means that 2018 is just going to get better and better for everybody. If you like us even more, then please feel free to drop us a review on Apple Podcasts. And as we say, it may be a new year, but it's the same old joke. If you remember, if you are going to drop us a review, don't give us a 10, because that'll make us big-headed. But don't give us a 1, because that'll make us cry. Just kind of go in the middle. Be like average, like a 5, because that is average, and we are decidedly average. But the gentleman who's not been average today is the wonderful, the fantastic Mr. Brandon Rollins from Pangea Games.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Good, I'm glad. As I say, it's just a chat. We might have accidentally recorded it, and it might be going out in front of, a few people, but that's just the way it is. There are only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Brandon?
No, I don't believe we are.
We definitely are not. We are burning that rubber down the highway, windows down, wind through our hair, catching the sun, catching some tunes, stopping off maybe for a bite to eat onward to our journey and our destination. And the second thing to do is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye wave from Brandon. Say goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for listening. Have an awesome day.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s. We, of course, will have lots of links for you to look at in the show notes. We're going to be keeping an eye on what Brandon's going to be doing with his Kickstarter campaign come the end of March, and you can guarantee that we will be making everybody aware of it when it does launch out there. Again, thank you for everybody that listened and supported to us last year. We still have... we've got a lot of guests coming on 2018. Some really, really interesting people. So stay tuned. But until the next time, it is a big goodbye and Happy New Year from myself. So, bye.